I love the HYROX training and the speed and all that high intensity stuff, but there's nothing better than just like getting out here. For me, there's nothing better than just getting out here and just like running in silence. I haven't listened to any music on the way up or anything. I know I feel like I have like this chaotic mind where like it doesn't shut off, and like when I come out here and it's just completely quiet, I just feel like this level of like this sense of calmness. Even though my calves are like screaming on the way up, there's something therapeutic about just literally being out here. And it probably sounds so f***ing corny, but what are you gonna do? Let's go plunge. What is going on, you guys, and welcome to another video. It's been about like 2 weeks since I posted a video, and it feels good to be back. We're just a couple days since the first race of the season, HYROX Houston. It was such an awesome experience. There were so many things that I learned from that race, and there were a lot of things that came out of that race that just leave me so inspired and so ready for the 2024 season. And I couldn't have asked for a better start to the season. So for today's video, we're going to talk a little bit about recap of HYROX, and then we're going to talk a little bit about my transition of going from a functional athlete and into an ultra athlete. And we'll talk a little bit about that in the back half. So for the HYROX recap, I thought of 3 different things. I really thought about my performance as an individual, my results, and then just some final thoughts walking away from the race. From a performance standpoint, I mean, I always look at what I did in the past and like what I'm doing today, and it was just night and day of like where I started and where I am today. There were 3 areas where I was super happy. 1 being the sled push, number 2 wall balls, 3 run time, and then number 4, I guess we'll add a 4th, is the total time. So for like sled push, when I did my first HYROX, my sled push time was 6:06, which is crazy to think about now. The second time, and these are different scattered races from like multiple Chicago ones, a Dallas one, and then the last number that I'll say is the most recent one for Houston. So like here are just some of my previous sled pushes time and how I've progressed over the last 2 years since starting HYROX. I went for sled push, it was 6:06, 4:46, 3:58, 2:49. So literally cut my time in over half on the sled push, which is super awesome to see because I used to be terrified of the sled push. I still remember the very first HYROX that I did in Chicago. I like tried to push it and it just like did not move. And it made me realize like how much strength I didn't have as an athlete, but I was still pretty quick as a runner. But it was just one of those eye-opening moments where it was like, hey, maybe I need to be a little bit stronger. The second one is around wall balls. And so like looking at the times, my first time was 4:43. Then the second and thirds bump up to 5:22 and 5:33. So I actually got worse in those next 2 HYROXs. But then coming in here to Houston, I landed at 3:52. And overall, I think I was 10th overall on wall balls, which is really cool to see. So to have that type of progression and then to be in the top 10 in overall athletes was really cool to see, because I don't know about you guys, for those that do HYROX, like I hate them. Like there's no way around them. It's at the end of the race. There's 100 of them. And you get like 20 down and you realize like, oh my God, like I still have 80 more to go. So I was super stoked with my performance of the wall balls because I was able to do exactly what I practiced over this last training block, which was doing 5 sets of 20 with a 3 to 5 second rest in between each set. So really happy to see that. On my run times, this is just something that continues to like get better. And honestly, me getting older every year, I keep telling myself like, how am I going to get faster? How am I going to get faster? And just looking at these times, like it's just happening. And it just seems like my consistency in time is just finally paying out. And when I look at my first HYROX, my total run time was 45 minutes. I then went to 39, then to 36, and now 33. So cutting 12 minutes off of my original time is just like so cool to see. Running is something I just love doing. And now that I'm starting to see my strength come into play, like this overall hybrid athlete training is just really cool to see, especially as I'm getting older. And then for the 4th component, just like time, like thinking about like how much time have I cut from the first time I did HYROX to now. My first time in Chicago was 1 hour and 27 minutes. I then went down to 1:18. I did 1:18 again for my 3rd one. My 4th one, I know I did 1:10. That was at 70 minutes last year in Chicago. And then here in Houston, I hit 1:07. So I'm finally in the 60s where I wanted to be. And like my goal was to have 68. So to be at 67 was exceeding my goal. Just like seeing that progression, it was just like a good reminder that, like, for me especially, of just like, I want it so bad to just like be the best version of myself. And it like, you think about all the hours and like all of the miles that you put in, like leading up to 1 hour of work, and just seeing it all come into play, it's just so fulfilling. From a results standpoint, like, this is cool, but it's not as important as like the performance piece. But it was cool to see, because I definitely walked into this race like wanting to podium, hit the top 3. I ended up in 5th place for my age group, and from what I was told, like the 35 to 39 age bracket is like the fastest age group. So to be 5th, I was like, damn, like, that's pretty cool, like, to be up there. And a lot of the guys that I was running next to were super fast and super strong, and it was cool to just be a contender and like be one of the people that's up there with them, keeping up with those, you know, bigger dudes, because I'm not the biggest guy. And when I looked at like the top 3 and like the winning time, it showed that like I'm 2 minutes away from a podium and 3 minutes away from actually winning the age group. So to think that I'm only 3 minutes away, and over the last 2 years, I've cut 20 minutes off of my time from 127 to 107. It's literally right there. Like, I can do this. I'm like thinking to myself, like, dude, you are right there. 3 minutes. And so right now, my gut's telling me that I'm not going to do one until Chicago in November. So it's like 7 months out from the time of this video. And I know I can do this. I know I can cut 3 minutes off of my time. There's a couple little things that I'll work on here over the next 6 to 7 months to prep for that. But as I think about like my final thoughts walking out of that race, like I said, like, I walked in wanting to podium and I didn't. But at the same time, I'm super happy with like how I performed against myself and how I've been performing against myself over the last 2 years. And as I said, like, to me, that's super fulfilling. And like, I always remind myself that like, this is why I do this stuff. This is why I do these types of competitions, the ultra running, the obstacle course racing. Like, it's really cool to see like how you're benchmarking against yourself. And yeah, the podiums and stuff like that are very cool, but to see what you're doing as an individual has been just like really cool. Because if you were to ask me 10 years ago at 25, you know, I was just at the club, you know, being dumb, getting drunk, doing drugs and all that stuff, but I would never expect to be traveling, doing this crazy stuff. But it also means that like the programming that I put in place is working, and like, I'm just throwing myself out there doing the best I can, and it's working. So it's like as someone who didn't start running until their mid-20s, because I didn't start running until I was 25, like, this is cool. It's cool to be like a contender and be a threat to some of these guys that have been running since college, or guys that have been running their entire life. Like, I'm keeping up with them, and that's super cool. So to close it up on like HYROX, yeah, it's like 7 months. I'm now pivoting over into a different type of race, so we'll get to that in a second. And the goal over the next year will be to cut 3 minutes off of my time.
This is the moment we waited for. Everything you want is right here. We gon' give them what they came for. We gon' take it up from last year. Shoot 'em my shot, boy, I'm long range. Me and the team on the same thing. Stayed down, never switched up. Only thing changed was the game. I'm in the zone now. Nothing can change what we on now. When I pull up, know it's going down. Foot on the gas, ain't no slowing down. Aiming for greatness, no settling. Kick down the doors, they won't let me in. Taking no else, yeah, I gotta win. Watch me kick down the doors, they won't let me in. Who running the game now? Foot on the gas, can slow down. No, my team, we holding it down. We know we running it now. Watch the game change. Watch the game change. Watch the game change. Watch the game change, yeah.
Now that HYROX is over, I'm pivoting my focus from being a functional fitness athlete now into an ultra athlete. So there's really 2 components that I think about right off the bat. Like, you know, we think about the programming in 2 components. There's like our strength and our running. And so as a hybrid athlete, like, I 100% believe in continuing the strength training. And so I will still be doing my strength training 3 times a week and doing a full body session. Right now, my typical volume for like these compound movements are a 4x10 for each exercise, and it's usually like 8 to 10 exercises per workout session. And I'm gonna follow that for the next 6 weeks. And then the back half of the 6 weeks, my running volume goes up, and we'll talk about that in a second. And so I'm gonna drop my volume from a strength training perspective from 4x10 down to 3x10, because I still wanna be doing my compound movements to maintain muscle, and we'll talk about that in a second. But I'm gonna be putting so much more mileage now on my body than I was before in this previous block for the functional fitness stuff for HYROX. And so from a running running perspective, I'm going to be still doing my 6 days a week, but I'm going to be going back to a power block. So if you go back to one of my previous videos, I do a power focused block up until 4 weeks leading up to HYROX, and then I pivot over to speed, where it's a lot of high turnover, a lot of intervals, a lot of speed work, high intensity. And for me, I think I've talked about this in the past, like I can't hold speed blocks very long because I feel like I get super fatigued and I typically end up getting injured. So I like to be a power-based athlete. I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that I do spend a lot of time in the mountains because that's where I do love to run. I mean, that's where the love of my sport started, was mountain running. So I'm going to be going back to a power focused block for the majority of this next training block, which is roughly 14 weeks at the time of this recording. So it'll be 2 to 3 mountain runs throughout the week. And one of the things I'm thinking about now is like, as I get further into this, like if I feel like I want to do like a speed day, let's say I just want to do like go to the park here downtown Denver and do like an 8 to 10, 12 mile progression where I just want to get speed, I'm going to allow myself to do that because at the end of the day, like I want to make sure that I continue to have fun while doing this. Yes, I will get the mileage in. I'm going to get some work in there. Maybe I won't get as much elevation gain that specific week by taking one of the 3 mountain runs and pivoting over to a speed run. But again, that's okay because for me, the mental piece of everything is more important now, because one of the things that I at least last year or the year before, I started to think about was that like I would be so rigid in my training. And I do believe that there is a lot of importance to having structure to your training, but I like to have a little bit of a deviation where it's like, you know, if I go off 5 to 10% every once in a while, like every couple of weeks, it's going to be fine. Like we're not going to like lose the race, or we're not going to like not complete the race because of one day of training. And for me, the mental piece of everything to continue to have fun is one of the things I'm carrying over into this year that I started that last year where I was like, look, go out there, have fun, do your thing. I'm carrying that into this year because that was something for me that just reminded me of like, look, this is what you love to do. Let's keep doing it. Yep, we have a plan, we have a structure. It's okay if we break off a little bit because like if we want to do a run with friends and they're more of a road runner, you're going to get a lot more benefit from like a spiritual, mental, emotional standpoint that's going to carry over into like your everyday life. And if that's good, then your training is going to be good. I know that may sound a little woo-woo, but like it's something that I definitely have started to enjoy more versus like saying that like I need to start at this specific time and do this specific thing 100% of the time. So going back to my running volume here for the running, when that strength training drops from the 4x10 to the 3x10, I said that that's when my running volume is going to go up. For HYROX, I was running roughly like 40 to 45 miles at the most on a weekly basis. For this training block, for this ultra plan, we're going to be bumping up to about 70 miles on a weekly basis, 2 to 3 mountain runs, sometimes speed run. But overall, from a weekly standpoint, we're going to be right around 70 miles, and we're going to be holding that for about 4 weeks at the end of the training block. Now, one of the things that I'm doing to monitor some metrics here throughout this program is using the InBody at Arsenal Health and Fitness. So 3 of the metrics that I think about as I enter this program are going to be my weight, my body fat percentage, and my skeletal muscle mass. So for weight, I did this morning. I weighed in at 136.7 pounds. I feel like with the additional volume that I'm going to be putting on my body, and now that we're getting into the season, I'm going to be dropping a little weight, but I really don't want to get below 134. I would like to ideally stay at 135 and maybe add some muscle, but again, given that we're going to be running more, it's going to be hard to do that, but I don't want to go below 134. The other thing too is like with body fat, right now I'm at 6.5% body fat, which is pretty low. I don't want to be getting below 5% because I do want to have fat on my body. And if I get too low, then it's like you're at risk to get sick. And then ultimately like everything starts not to work. I want to be healthy. Yes, I want to have like good aesthetics. I want to look good at the pool. That's all great. But what's more important to me is like my health and my performance as an athlete. Like I want to make sure that like I'm in a good state. Like looking good is great, but if I'm not feeling good and I'm not like performing well like at my day job or like making content, then like why is it really worth it? So for me, like I feel good at 6.5%. I know that that's going to drop now that like I'm going to be spending more time in the mountains, running more, my diet is getting cleaner, you know, now that we're in season, all of the winter weight is slowly coming off. So like I'm giving myself that little bit of wiggle room from a weight perspective, like, yeah, we're going to drop, but like, let's not let the body fat go below 5%. And so the third metric, this is actually a nice segue into the third one here with skeletal muscle mass. Right now that's at 74.1 pounds. And so this includes body fat mass. I want to do my best to maintain that. So that's why I'm trying to carry that strength training over into this program of continuing that 4x10 volume for compound lifts. and then only drop it to 3x10 on the last 4 weeks of the program. Because again, I'm adding more running volume, so something's got to give, and I will give up 25% of my strength training. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to test my in-body every month for the next 3 months leading up to the race. The race is the Solstice 50 miler. This is a 50 miler race in the San Juan Mountains in Southwest Colorado. It's on the summer solstice, June 22nd, which is pretty cool. It's gonna be the sunniest day of the year. So it's one of those things where I was going to do it last year, but going through some of the personal stuff that I went through, I made the decision not to do it. And so I'm super excited to finally be in a place where I feel confident that, one, I can do the race in a really great way. My performance and like my mental game is just 100% right now. And so these are nice little metrics that as I continue with my training, which I feel really good about, these are just some metrics that like I can test throughout the program to make sure that I'm not going down too far one way. At the beginning of the year, we've talked about this before, I did my blood work to understand like some of the vitamins and micronutrients that like I was deficient in, and I did that all through Arsenal. So like I have my supplementation protocol in place where it's like we feel good, right? Nutrition's on point, our fitness training is on point. Now let's make sure that the numbers are making sense from like a weight, body fat, and muscle mass perspective to ensure that everything is going to plan as we start to increase the running volume. So I'm super stoked. It's gonna be an awesome year. Q1 was really focused around like the functional fitness, the HYROX building muscle. Now let's build up the running volume. Let's get the mountain legs back. And so for the next couple videos, I'm gonna be just doing a lot of vlogging of like in the mountains and like training throughout this program. But if you guys have any questions around like some of the things that I'm doing, whether it's like what I'm eating, how I'm running, how I'm like picking routes, how I'm picking like my running days in the road versus the mountain, stuff like that, just leave them in the comments section below. But as always, I truly appreciate you guys watching the channel and keeping up with just my journey here. It's been an exciting couple of years. And if you are interested to check out like any type of training that I do, whether it's like ultra running, marathon, HYROX, obstacle course racing, there's a link in the description for my training app that you could check out that will give you access to all of my programs. So thanks again for watching, and we'll catch you in the next video.